Hello, everybody, and good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Excellent Podcast. I'm your cinematic host, STEFON WHITAKER, the head honcho of SW Films, and today we have a very, very special guest, a polarizing figure in Northeast Indiana, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, someone who I met, I want to say maybe in 2016 or 2017, maybe, through some friends of mine. And as soon as I met him, as soon as I'd heard about him, I said, okay, this guy seems to be one of the more interesting people and more impactful people in Fort Wayne. Someone who has helped out so many people, supported everybody's business, and just have been there to give a lot of people great feedback and great just advice to grow their business and grow their brand and get to know more of what they're trying to do in the city or wherever it may be. So I'm super, super happy to have Steve Franks here on the podcast. This is something that is like amazing. Steve, first of all, how are you doing? How's your morning going in Indiana?
Good morning. Fall just happened yesterday. All of a
I
sudden,
heard.
you know how Indiana goes. It's like 90 degrees one day, and the next day it's 40.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. Tonight the temperatures are dipping into the 40s. There's 2 days after it was like really hot, nice shorts and t-shirt weather.
Oh yeah. See,
it's that crazy Indiana weather up here, but it's lovely. I mean, you gotta love it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of miss it. It's been super, super hot here in the Bay Area. I just bought an air conditioner not too long ago, or not too long, but last night, because it was way too hot in here.
Wow.
And so I was like, I definitely need my own. I need to like cool it down. It's getting pretty hot because Bay Area has Indian summer, so it gets pretty hot during the fall time. But Steve, thank you once again for being here on the podcast. I appreciate it. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, back when the podcast was the vlog channel, Stefon's Vlogs, where I kind of captured some of the behind the scenes of my life and stuff like that. So I'm very happy to have you on here to talk about some different stuff. So with that being said,
really happy that you invited me. I love it.
Yeah,
this
absolutely. Absolutely. So to start off, I want you to introduce yourself to the people who are listening and watching right now. Tell us who you are and speak to your excellence. Give yourself an opportunity to humble brag about the things that you do.
Okay, well, thanks. I appreciate that. I'll try not to be too humble. How's that?
Yeah, there you go.
So I have been an entrepreneur coach, if you want to look at it that way, and what I would say an arts enthusiast for a couple of decades around here in Fort Wayne. I did a bunch of other stuff. I'm a lot older than most people, so although I never kind of grew up mentally and emotionally, which is like
it's the key to life.
I highly recommend that. But so for the past couple of decades, I've worked with lots of young entrepreneurs and older entrepreneurs, and I've worked with a lot of younger artists, emerging, upcoming artists. And when I say work with, I don't mean that I can coach anybody on how to do art. I mean that we've talked about their business sometimes, or I've just collected their art. I'm gonna used to say I have artwork from 40 local artists around here. I'm guessing by now I should update that to it's probably over 50 by now. So I love local artists and I love local entrepreneurs. I think that's kind of the future.
Absolutely.
So I've done that in various capacities in various places around our region, and you can ask me more about that or any of those sorts of things at one point. I think when I met you, I was working out of the Atrium in downtown Fort Wayne.
Yep.
And people like Dylan and Justin were involved in some of the programming that went on there with their company at the time that was called, still is called Cart Delivery.
Yep.
So, so basically, it's kind of fun to be able to do what is very much fulfilling. as a person.
Absolutely.
I've been
Yeah.
very lucky in my life to find the things that I love doing and to find that I was decently okay at doing them
Yeah.
and get engaged in doing that. And I think that's what you noticed is that I love what I'm doing. I mean, I look at my life as a mission. I never had a mission until I started working in kind of a nonprofit space. And life was just, I go to work, I make money, I come home, I do this, I do that, blah, 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 blah. It was nearly meaningless, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But once you find out what you're good at and find out what the mission is that you want to do in your life, it's like shit changes right then and there,
Absolutely.
man. So
Yeah.
I kind of boil it down into one phrase that I stole from the nonprofit I work with. I work with one called Believe in a Dream, and we had a vision vision statement that said that we enable the next generation to build a better tomorrow. And I love that. I thought that was the best vision statement I think I've ever seen, and it just resonated with me as to what I do. And the new board came in and changed it a little bit. So I took it for my own part of the program. I took it as my own personal mission. So we're keeping it the way it says, because that's indeed what I'm here to do. It's that I'm here to watch another generation grow. I'm here to watch another generation build a world that is better.
Yeah.
And everything that I do kind of revolves around that. And that could be through entrepreneurship, or that can be through the arts, either one. Both sorts of people, whether they're a business person, whether they're, let's say, a painter or filmmaker, everybody that does everything like that, you're building something, you're doing something, you're actively making the world a better, more beautiful place. And I mean, does it get any better than that, Stefan?
I don't think so. I definitely don't think so. I think you summed that up super well, just about yourself and what you do. And it's great because, I think prior to meeting you in 2016, 2017, whenever that was, obviously I was born in Fort Wayne and then grew up in Angola, Indiana. So Angola definitely doesn't have it doesn't have the same resources as Fort Wayne does when it comes to entrepreneurs and creatives. And, going to Fort Wayne to kind of, go into the Atrium and then meet all of these other folks who are building these different businesses here. And, meeting all these different people, you kind of see that some of these people are like in the same process as I might have been at the time, or as Dylan or Justin might have been at the time. And it was just really cool to kind of get an opportunity to meet these people and work with some of these people and stuff like that. And it's been great for you of how you got into you're one of the most well-known people in Fort Wayne. You're almost like a Fort Wayne celebrity in a sense, I mean, almost. Almost like a celebrity. I mean, how are you one of the most well-known people out here? I mean, obviously you love to network with people, you love to be out there and support folks, but was that like a mission to kind of have that sort of weight to your name and to your character, like to be that type of person where everybody knows who you are?
It wasn't intentional. I never had a goal. It was like, I want to be known. I want to be well known.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with it. Before I started working with entrepreneurs, so I did a series of things in tech. I owned a software company for a while. I worked with a engineering firm for a while. I worked with a firm that was kind of like a partner, if you will, in a firm that did innovation consulting, which was awesome, cool, helping people develop breakthrough next generation products or invent them. And then when I came back to Fort Wayne, I lived outside the city for a couple of years. And when I came back, I started working at the Northeast Indiana Innovation Center. And frankly, I got to know people because everybody thought the innovation center was this place that was just like loaded up with shovels full of money, and you were going to come and you were going to get money to do your business, and it was just going to be awesome. What they really found when they got there was there were people like me that were coaches that weren't shovelfuls of money, but that was the draw. And some people were interested in and had a a good sense of the fact that there weren't going to be shovels of money, but there were in fact going to be people there that could help them grow their business. But it was just this lightning rod drawing point. And so all of a sudden I started to know people, and I discovered that in my other jobs, I had no need to do that. So I didn't know like anybody in the city, anybody in the area. Our customers weren't here. There's no reason for me to know people. So all of a sudden there was. And I started going to events, and I started to go to like art openings, and I started to discover new communities. If I can just talk, if you don't mind me just
go ahead
for a while. So let's say that here's how that works. So I'd go to something like an art opening, and I would be intrigued to go there or find out about it because one of our young entrepreneurs that I was working with during the student venture lab I started at the Innovation Center, or the student meetup that I worked with at the Innovation Center, knew about that and said, hey, you should come to this. And what I found was that there was this huge overlap between the entrepreneurial community and the arts community. And that's why I've kind of always gravitated toward both, at least in Fort Wayne. And both of those communities of people were sort of, I'm going to say, hidden. It was like the best kept secrets. It was like, oh crap, there's a bunch of people out here that got it going on. But the world doesn't know about them. And they don't give a crap about whether the world knows about them because they're just out there making their art. They're just out there doing their business. They're not trying to be a part of the old boys network. They just want to do stuff. So what I found was I could bounce between different communities, and I could bounce between different events. And not only was it a way for me to meet new people, but it was fun. It's fun. And a lot of what I've done has just been because I think it's cool. And it gives me energy. It gives me energy to be around people like you. So, I mean, that's really what I can say.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, definitely like having that opportunity to meet people through these different just different ways, like I would say probably back in your day, right? Back when Steve was younger and even more energy, or actually you have more energy than you've ever had, probably. More energy, but back in the day,
it's all in the mindset, man. It's all in the mindset.
Absolutely. Back in the day when you were probably about my age, right? Was there anybody like you around that you had, like how you are for other people? Was there anybody else like you that was coaching and mentoring people to help them in their business? Because I feel like it's a much more common thing nowadays. It's much more common. I don't know how common it was maybe at a like way back in the day. Well, what would you say?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on the fact that our communication is a lot more wide open today, given the social media, given the internet, and so forth. And I think there probably were those people, but I was totally not looking for that. So I couldn't tell you who they were or what they were doing. I was more interested in other things when I was your age. And we're not going to go in. We're not necessarily going to go into what these were.
Right. That's funny.
Nothing to do with what I do today.
Understandable. Yeah. It's because definitely I think, when even during that time, like when I had came back from college and then went back to Indiana, I never, there was nobody I'd ever met that was to the point where everybody knew them in the city and they had reached them for help. I'm sure you've had so many different people that you've come across? Like, for me, sometimes I've worked with so many different types of people and have met so many different types of people, celebrities and normal folks and all that, just through all these different things that I do.
Wait,
And I don't
celebrities
know.
aren't normal folks?
Not really. Some they're normal. They're folks. They're normal people, but definitely some of them aren't normal. We'll talk about some interesting conversations.
Yikes.
But yeah, it's just like sometimes I come across so many people in one day or 1 week, and it's like, man, this is kind of exhausting having to, just all these different deep conversations you might have to have with somebody about certain things. And we'll kind of break off into that eventually.
So I kind of ran into like two other people that pretty much do what I do and act like I act when it comes to working with younger entrepreneurs, all in one day last week. The day was the arts crawl. That's that thing that they do in downtown Fort Wayne, where they have different artists and different recording artists and food and drink, all at about 7 or 8 different locations throughout downtown. And I love to volunteer for that because that's the only way you can get the T-shirt. Because you volunteer. So I love T-shirts. So
that's awesome.
But at the time, I had lunch that morning with Aaron Robles, who's another one of those people who works with everybody and is like known from all the way through the region. And he's promoted events himself, like his Founder Spark Origin events, where he brings entrepreneurs together. And I met him when he was in high school, and he was in a class that I went and talked to that was run by Karen Gilly at Fort Wayne's Anthus Career Center. And she teaches graphic design. And at the time, they were also doing some entrepreneurship stuff. And I saw Karen at the Arts Crawl. One of the places that I visited was the Atrium. And one of my artist friends, I went there because Julie Wall was doing, her art was on exhibit there. And by the way, there was also a wonderful group playing called the Debutantes, which are just
the Debutantes.
They're marvelous. It's kind of bluegrass, but it's more than that. I've heard them do Pink Floyd in a bluegrass way. It's like,
that's cool.
Who are these people? But at any rate, so I ran into Karen there, and we started talking. And I said, "Hey, I just ran into Aaron," and blah 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 blah. And we came across with exactly the feeling that you just said, and that is that there are a small number of people throughout the community. I feel honored to be one of them that really wants to push the youth and the entrepreneurial and the artistic folk of our of our upcoming generation forward. And she's one, Aaron's one. I consider myself one. I think I would call Andy Hines Lagerman, who's a good friend, one. And then there are probably a lot of people that feel bad that I would leave them off, but these are the people that come to my mind initially. And are out there actively doing that sort of stuff. So it's a fun group. It's a fun group, and you're right. I can't name 20 people that do that. I could probably name about 3 or 4 more. But we'll stop.
Realistically,
right
realistically, no, absolutely. And I think that's just, like I said, to have that, just that amount of people, because Fort Wayne is obviously the second biggest city in Indiana, and Fort Wayne, it's going to be interesting. We're going to be talking a lot about how I view Fort Wayne too, and the entrepreneur, just the how everything is over there. And I want to get your opinion of everything too, but it's just good that we have that many people that want to help out the entrepreneur and creative communities, because I think sometimes in the higher ups, maybe in the economy in Fort Wayne, doesn't necessarily want to put too much profit maybe into some of these things, at least for creative. I'm sure entrepreneurs are a little different. There's a little difference there, but creatives, I feel like sometimes don't always get the necessary profit for some things that they may do. So it's good to have some encouragement from a person like yourself and other people that you name.
I think it's very much the same for both groups. And that if you look at the old school thinking, the old boys network, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They're interested in who's the next company that I can bring into the city that's going to have 1,000 jobs in the entrepreneurship space. And I've always been interested in how can we grow 1,000 new businesses and let them grow from there.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And when you look at creatives, I think they're interested in the people that are already established. And I'm interested in that person that's kind of just starting out and I can still afford to buy their artwork.
Right.
I'll give you a couple examples. I'm going to duck to the side here. I'm trying to. So the abstract piece behind me, that's one of Theo Smith's early pieces. So back when I could afford to buy an original Theo.
Shout out to Theo.
Original Fresh Laundry. I probably own more of his artwork than anybody's right now. I've got a few things that are original. I've got a piece that's on just hanging up on my living room wall that's done on a hunk of triangular cardboard that he just found somewhere and painted on. Back in the days when it was like, hey, I don't even know if I can get canvas, but I'm gonna make some art.
That's great. That's right.
The thing that looks like a ram's head behind me is done by Julie Wall. Julie took a long time to get started, but now she has a location and she produces a lot of art. Theo, as you know, has become popular. He's popular. He's approaching that celebrity status himself right now, I think. He has a lot of really famous people that have bought some of his art, and his art hangs in places throughout the world.
It's amazing. You know
what I'm talking about. You're working on things right now that are going to be seen everywhere throughout the globe.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome, cool.
It's great. There's so much talent, man, and that's just cool that just to think about it too is like, you own like a piece of history in certain people's like careers, and it's like that just like kind of that's also amazing to look at, just to know that you've got a chance to meet these folks, How did you get started in coaching and entrepreneuring, and what got you interested in doing that? Like, because I feel like, me personally, what I usually do here in the industry for SW Films, I'm a director, writer, and a producer. And, directing, I put in the same category sometimes as teaching, coaching, and mentoring, because, you're doing that for certain folks to bring out a certain emotion or to, like I said, to do certain kind of actions or whatever, or have certain kind of just emoting qualities. Like, what made you want to try to coach and teach people in this particular way too? Like, what made you want to do that?
Well, this will probably be a fairly long answer, so I apologize for that ahead of time.
It's all good. That's what we want.
There are two directions that it comes from. The first is that I've noticed one of the programs I'm involved with uses the Clifton Strengths techniques to have young people discover what their strengths are. So I've taken that as well, and I know that my top 5 strengths line up with that. So on the one hand, they fall into 2 groups. One is ideation. One of my top strengths is ideation. And one of my other top strengths is intellection, which means that I can live in my head really, really well and come up with new ideas. And on the other hand, and the ideation part of it means that I get bored easily. I can't do repetitive things over and over again. It just drives me crazy. I'll stop. But then on the other side of my strengths, I'm into being, connection, and I'm into adaptability. I'm into, on the one hand, living in my head and coming up with new things. On the other hand, it's connections and empathy and those sorts of things. Perfect storm for being a coach. Absolutely perfect storm for being a coach. Because I get to play with, and I have played with hundreds, if not thousands, of companies. So everything's new. so I don't have to worry about getting bored, right? Because
Right.
I listen to what you're trying to accomplish, and I can comment about it, and I can share my ideas, and it makes me all fulfilled. How did I get started doing that? I was doing innovation consulting in Cleveland. I decided that I was going to not do that anymore, and I came back to Fort Wayne, and I got involved with this organization that was just brand new, and it had the word innovation in its title, the Northeast Indiana Innovation Center. So it was, I just went, oh my God, it's got the word innovation. I have to go there.
Gotta do it.
I have to figure out what this thing is, and I need probably to be a part of it, and or at least be there. And so what I found out when I got there was that my view of innovation, which was creating and inventing products, was absolutely not what they did. They worked on commercialization of ideas that other people already had. So they did entrepreneurship. But once I got involved and, initially got hired to do some part-time coaching of some companies in actually I was supposed to coach a bunch of interns that were supposed to be coaching some entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, the interns had zero experience in doing any of that, which is why I got hired. And so we ended up doing this thing where we help people win business plan competitions, and we won all the paid places for like 4 years running, which was kind of cool. But I discovered that was cool, and I liked it. And I think because I didn't know it at the time, but it fed on those two different parts of my strengths, and it gave me this sense of being fulfilled. And so, just like inventing new products, I'm into newness. I'm into creating things that are new. Which makes sense. Entrepreneurship and creatives, right? So I'm always into newness. So I felt fulfilled by that, just like I did when I was doing the innovation consulting. There's nothing more fulfilling than coming up with this aha idea about, oh my God, this is such a killer product idea. This is going to take over. The competition doesn't even know what we're thinking about. Those ideas are just totally amazing, and they work in both fields. Innovation, entrepreneurship, they kind of go hand in hand, really. And so strictly by accident, because this organization had the word innovation in their title, I ended up coaching entrepreneurs.
Wow.
My life has been a series, Stefan, of all these accidents that led me stumbling down the road to this place where I fit.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Isn't that weird?
It is. It's not even weird because it's like it was meant for you. You know what I mean? It's never weird when it perfectly fits for who you are and what you're supposed to be doing out here. So that's great. I mean, are you still with this company, with the organization, the innovation? Are you still with them?
No. We had a parting of ways about a decade ago. I have we'll say that the culture that the management of that group was putting forth at the time was something that I wasn't into.
Yeah.
And so I left, and that was when I helped start my co-working space called Founders in downtown Fort Wayne, where the Tolan restaurant is today, right there on the landing.
Oh, wow.
And we did that back in 2012, 2013, and operated that for somewhere around a year, a little more maybe. Interrupted at once by the fact that there was a fire in the place above us, and we got all the water damage that came out of that.
Oh man!
And so we had to close for a while, and then we came back, and we finally closed for good when we discovered there was asbestos in the basement that was unfiltered and was leaking up through our HVAC system. It was like, crap, we can't.
Yeah.
But we never recovered, and we closed. And but that was such a wonderful time in my life, because we were kind of like a freeware co-working space. So anybody could come in, do anything they wanted. I remember there was a lady who was an artist, and she thought you had to be like a computer geek or something to come into this, and you bring a laptop and do something. It's like, no, I don't care. Come on in and do whatever you want. So she would bring watercolors in and paint.
Wow.
And that was just kind of cool. And So we did that for a while. And that, like I say, all the decisions in my life lead me down a path from one place to another. So you're getting more than you bargained for in answer to your question. So no, I'm not with the Innovation Center. I co-founded a co-working space. We operated that for a while. I met a bunch of really cool people. I brought a lot of cool people together there. There were people that came there that, oh my God, everywhere from people that were indeed filmmakers, rap artists, other artists, and a bunch of computer folk. The people that Start Fort Wayne met there.
Oh, wow.
Who started
That's
the Atrium, in other words, met there. They probably wouldn't have gotten together had that not happened.
Yeah.
So it was a catalytic place. It wasn't a financial success, but it was a catalytic place for the community, in my opinion.
That's great. I mean, that just sounds like, right? That sounds just so, it's monumental to do that. You know what I mean? And at that time too, when Founders was around, was that like one of the first co-working spaces that Fort Wayne has kind of ever had?
Yeah, I think there was. I think there was one attempt before that never really got too far along at all. But I think it was the first time there was a co-working space that actually worked.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think it worked a lot better than the current co-working space. The current co-working space is interested in a business model. So to be there, you have to pay money. We didn't care about that. We had a premium tier, so we were very close to breaking even. Would have given us a little bit more time, we could have done that. But the idea was that we wanted philosophically to be totally open. We wanted anybody to be able to come in and do whatever they wanted without thinking about paying for money. Drink some coffee, it's free. Have a Pepsi, it's free. Have a snack, it's free. Just come on in and be there and do things.
Yeah. It's super welcoming to have an area like that, for the city. It's good.
It's amazing what happens when you're welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's just the people come. We kept records of how many hours people worked. We had a little iPad at the door where you could come in and you could press your icon and say, I'm here. And then on the way out, you could press it again and say, I'm gone.
Wow.
So we knew how many hours people were there and worked.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
That's great.
It was cool. It was fun. It was hip, if you will.
Yeah. Because I know the Atrium was actually, so when I went to the Atrium, that was the very first, I think, co-working space I'd probably ever been to at the time. I don't think I'd ever seen, maybe in Florida when I was in college, maybe, but I mean, Florida, that school was kind of like a co-working space that, that paid so much money for. But yeah, I think Atrium was actually the very first co-working space that I'd ever been to. And that's when I very first had like kind of seen what that was. And then, I've done a few different like jobs out here. We've worked in co-working spaces. I can't really remember the names off the top of my head. I do remember this one that was like, it was somewhere in Richmond, California. It was Black operated, and it was a very big open space. We had shot, I forget what we were even working on. We were working with some software tech company, and we had filmed a few different things in there. That was pretty cool to see that space. But there's a lot of those spaces out here in the Bay Area and LA and stuff like that. So a place like Fort Wayne, getting an opportunity to have maybe one or two in the city, just feel it's good. I think it's definitely great to have it. One question I have though, back on co-working spaces specifically, is Atrium. I don't know. I haven't been to the Atrium in a long time, so I don't know if they're still around or still open. It's been a little while, but I mean, I guess do you know if they're open or not, or if they're still operating?
Absolutely. I'm still a member.
Yeah.
And they still cash my checks, so they must be open. No,
yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Like a lot of co-working spaces, the pandemic was not good for them. And so what they're doing now is working their way out of that.
Yeah.
And so things are starting to pick up a little bit. And so they're there, but they're not like quite as thriving as they wish they could be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They were kind of taken over, if you will. So the Start Fort Wayne, I should say, who operated Atrium, was taken over, and that was a nonprofit that was started by Dave Sanders and some other folks. And and when Dave kind of stepped away and back to his traditional business, he's a software tech guy, and he was really busy because most of his work was remote, so he never got hit by pandemic, and he stayed really busy. But he moved away from Start Fort Wayne. I think his goal was to get it started, and he accomplished that very well. And then trying to figure out what would happen to Start Fort Wayne and Atrium, Dan Swartz, who started WHITAKER, who I'm assuming you know Dan.
Yeah, I've heard of. I think I've seen him on like Facebook and seen a few different things.
Yeah, he's kind of elusive. If you don't hang out at WHITAKER much, you probably don't know him too well.
Yeah.
So in other words, he took it over. He took over Start Fort Wayne as their executive director, and kind of took over Atrium, if you will. And the people that were running Atrium really never changed or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just the guy running Start Fort Wayne, that's exec, changed a little bit. So they've had a few changes. They're still there. It's still a great place if you're listening in Fort Wayne and need a place to come and work.
Go to the Atrium.
A combination of open seating and private offices. And one reason that I maintain membership there is that I can reserve a conference room for like practically nothing. I get little conference rooms available for literally nothing. It's included in what I pay. But I can reserve a larger room to put on a workshop or something like that for next to nothing. So it has a lot of those great advantages.
Absolutely.
As far as working spaces like that, the Innovation Center focuses mainly on longer term leases, but they have a few shorter term little solo entrepreneur spaces as well. And the Enterprise Center, which is now called Seed, has got some spaces. Normally they're bigger. They're for people that are going to be doing some maybe a larger manufacturing sort of thing or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Now what we're hoping for are more places around, which proverbially this happens like once every few years. People start talking about it, but we need a larger space that's devoted to artists. We need shared studio space. We don't have a lot of that. I think there might be at least one place that does some shared studio space around.
There's a few spots. I guess it's just there's so many different kinds of studio, different uses for some of these different studios. I know there's a lot of different studios out here in the Bay. That could be used as like event space or obviously used as like it's specifically a film and video studio or photography studio that's used for a lot of stuff. I definitely think Fort Wayne needs more of those, or at least needs to be more marketed out there so people could be aware of maybe where to reach them, how to reach them. Because I feel like it's hard for a lot of artists like that to use those resources. Because I know some people will rent to folks, but it's just kind of hard to reach out or reach their prices. Some of the prices are definitely high for Indiana a little bit.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people here that do film are basically going to rent equipment from Chicago.
Yeah, that's the thing too. And eventually what I would love to do for Fort Wayne, because I have different viewpoints, and I usually, since I'm from Angola, and also Fort Wayne. I look at both of those and I kind of
That's okay.
equate.
You can do it in Angola. You don't have to do it in Fort Wayne just because you're talking to me.
Well, no, I just because when I was living in Angola in Fort Wayne, I always like to equate some of the similarities and differences sometimes that they have. And, obviously the big difference for Fort Wayne and Angola when it comes to this, subject is just that Angola is much smaller and doesn't have those types of resources. So there's different resources I think that needs to happen. I think Fort Wayne has a few things already dialed down.
When you look at Fort Wayne compared to Indianapolis, and then Indianapolis compared to Chicago.
Yeah, that's true.
Same thing.
That's true. So it's just like, I think that Fort Wayne, Indiana in general doesn't have film incentives. So Indiana doesn't have the opportunity to get a whole lot of film work. A lot of productions are not happening in Fort Wayne like that, or excuse me, in Indiana. So the thing is, I think what would make it so much more helpful if there was a production house or rental house that people could rent from, as you were saying. That is something. There's a place here in the Bay Area called Ranahan. Shout out to Ranahan. They're pretty much the main rental house that people use in the Bay Area. They've been around for a long time. I don't know how long, but everybody rents from them. They're based in Berkeley. And, usually what happens on certain productions is sometimes if I have to go pick up a production truck, I go to Ranahan. You pick up the truck, you go sign out a form, drive the truck off. The truck has all this stuff in it, director's chairs, trash cans, just a bunch of stuff that is needed for production. Or, same thing with camera trucks. And having that helps, because if the Bay Area didn't have that, then, the Bay Area would have the film community wouldn't be as prominent. And there's a few other rental houses too, but Ranahan's definitely the biggest one. But I think if Fort Wayne you had something like that, I feel like the community would help out so much more. But I feel like it takes bigger projects and bigger companies to come out there to allow that. But that's something that I would like to do eventually, is try to bring a rental house to Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne is the size that they could definitely use something like that.
So there are really two things, as you said, that I think that I totally agree are really important. One, from the governmental standpoint, we have no financial incentives in place for people to come and do film production here.
Yeah.
And that sucks, because guess where everybody's not going to come to do their film. And I've heard, you may know the name Ben Richards.
Yeah.
So Ben is down at IU right now. But he just received some awards from the nonprofit that I work with, Believe in a Dream. He just received a Young Entrepreneurs Award for some of the work that he does.
Oh, nice.
I mean, the kid's in college, man. And so basically he's younger than you. And he's now producing his third feature film. It's like, holy crap, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad at all. And
absolutely.
So one of the things that he says is that there are a group of people that have come out of IU in film, the Indiana Mafia, he would say. And so he wants to be a part of a group that brings people together and then lobbies the state for incentives. And I totally agree with that. He's never talked about the need for rental or equipment or anything, but I always figured that studio space was going to get covered by somebody. Huntington University here in Northeast Indiana has a pretty good digital school, and that includes a lot of good people in film as well. And I always figured that they would expand their studio and their equipment capabilities and make it available. And so far, it's grown a little, but it hasn't grown as much as I thought it might.
Yeah, definitely the schools help out. There's just not, I feel like, definitely IU is a big one, because IU Bloomington specifically has a company called Pegasus Pictures, which I don't know if they're still located in Bloomington, but they did create some kind of acting school out there that kind of helps out with folks, and just having those resources help out a whole lot. And, me, myself, instead of just being a person, because, I'm growing much of my own notoriety as well as growing SW Films. here in the Bay, which is, a whole nother area that I have to grow and kind of, you know, bloom in, which I feel like I've done a pretty good job of that so far. I still want to give back a lot to Indiana. Of course, that's home. And it's like, there's a lot of different things I want to do to help kind of build those up. And I think a rental house eventually would be such a huge thing, because that would help out a lot of people. A lot of people don't have the proper equipment. If you do want certain equipment, you're going to, people are going to end up buying this equipment, and it's going to cost them so much more. And truthfully, it's just, that stuff kind of, decreases in value, especially after you buy it. I think it's just better to have some certain things rented. And there's a lot of stuff, just knowing there's certain like there's not being a part of these different productions. I know what kind of type of equipment is really needed to make it a good experience on set. And I feel like not a lot of small crews or certain things, these different people who are kind of working individually have that or know that specifically. There's a lot of stuff that is important to have on these sets, and I think it's good to have a rental house eventually. So that's a plan for the future.
So there's not a, just shout out to you, man, because there are probably a lot of people that dream about doing what you're doing, but don't have the guts or the balls to go do it. Like you said, I'm going to go where I can learn about film and where I can involve myself and be engaged and up my skills. And went to the Bay Area. And just spent some time on the West Coast, Bay Area, LA, et cetera, et cetera. And as you said, the people that stick around Fort Wayne and say, I'm going to do film, it's like, they don't have that exposure, man. They don't learn those stuff. So shout out to you for
thank you
doing what you're doing. Second shout out to you, by the way. You always keep Angola in Indiana in your head.
Absolutely, all the time.
I know that you. I've seen things that you produced that you shot right here in Angola. Right. After you'd moved away.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that you're there upping your skills, but I know that you're back here doing some shooting from time to time. So kudos to you, man. That's awesome. Cool.
All right, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I always want to make sure to give back where I can for home, and as I continue to grow the notoriety, I think it'll help out to get more things going. But back to you with coaching and entrepreneuring, just the aspect of teaching and mentoring. Like, does that have a special place for you? And just where, like, basically, like everything that you've done now up until this point, like where you're at specifically now, like, do you feel accomplished with all the different people that you've gotten to speak to and people that you've gotten to like help them get their businesses and ideas created? Like, does that have a special place for you? Does that how does that truly fulfill you on a daily?
So I think I started out not with this overarching vision of helping another generation build a better tomorrow. I think I started out with a feeling of I love newness and I love helping people create things. I love creating things. So my specialty is coaching people that are in a startup mode. Somebody that's been in business 10 years and needs somebody to coach them to make a change. It's like, man, I'm not your guy. That's not me. I like to sit around the table and hear people like Dylan and Justin go, hey, we're thinking about doing this new thing. And what do you think about this? And how could we approach that? And after you do a few hundred of those things, you have a pretty good idea in your head of what works and doesn't. I'll never tell you whether or not I think your product idea or your service idea is good. That's up to your customers. But I can tell you how to go find out the answer to that. I can tell you what might not work. I can let's go back to Dylan and Justin. Just because it's fun to talk about. And you'll remember this, I'm sure. They came back after having kind of put their business on hold for a while. And and so we're thinking about maybe doing something again, blah, blah, blah. No, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And so for lack of a more nice way of saying it, I
Yeah.
basically just said, well, I don't know what you're thinking about. Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they have cited that on more than one occasion as well.
Yeah.
I guess we just kind of needed to hear that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So so for
Yeah.
me, it's uh, coaching is fun because sometimes I can help somebody think through something and
Yeah.
help them be successful. On other occasions, people just need somebody to tell them it's okay.
Yeah, that's true.
And since I work a lot with entrepreneurs that are younger, when you look at people in high school and
Mhm.
college, sometimes they've heard for so many years that uh, they're the underlings, right? You're the younglings. You don't know. You're not mature enough yet to do stuff. Wait till you're
Right.
done with school. Wait till you're done with that. Wait till. It's like,
Yeah.
so they need somebody to step in and go, I don't know what the heck you're thinking about. Just go do it. You have everything that it takes to be able to do this.
Right.
And they need somebody that doesn't patronize them. They need somebody that believes in them. And for a long time, I called that my superpower. It was like, I just believe in young people and I believe
Yeah.
they can do it.
Yeah.
You're in a different environment than Indiana. You've noticed the difference. If
Yeah.
if you're in the Bay Area and you haven't started the company by the time you're 18, you're probably not in the majority. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Honestly.
And here in Indiana, if you haven't started your company by then,
Yeah.
you're a good boy or a good girl because you
Yeah.
waited. Now you're going to go get a job someplace, right? It's like
Right. Right. Right.
it's just so much BS.
Yeah.
It's important. Sorry, my soapbox today is that it's important for everybody in the upcoming generation to understand how to own and start and run their own business.
Absolutely.
In my father's era, people went to work for a company, the companies took care of them. And like my father, you could stay there for 30 years. That shit just doesn't work anymore. Companies don't do that anymore. They don't take care of you. They don't give you a full lifetime employment. You're on your own, baby. You need to know how to be on your own.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to do what I do. It's like to help people understand that they don't have to be dependent on everybody else, that they can go do it on their own.
Yeah.
This generation more than any needs it.
Absolutely. There's so many great points that you brought up I have a few different questions on a few points, specifically on the company, like how you said, it's not like that anymore, where companies they don't take care of people and people are working there for years and years and years. I want to get your opinion. I know you've been hearing about how there's been seemingly a staff shortage, like in a lot of places for these different kind of jobs throughout the nation. You know, it's been happening a lot, even here in the Bay. A lot of companies are, a lot of people are getting staff shortages because people don't want to work. You know, the pandemic has been was a very rough situation for a lot of people. And we're still in a pandemic, but the height of the pandemic was very tough for a lot of people. So a lot of people were living off unemployment. For a while, I tried to get on unemployment, but for some reason it didn't work for me. And luckily I got lucky to where I think in June of last year, I stayed pretty consistent working and stuff like that. But the thing is, though, is what is your opinion on these staff shortages? Do you think that it's more than people don't want to necessarily, they just want to, live off the government? Or do you believe that some people are kind of realizing like, hey, I don't want to work for this company that's not taking care of me. I'd rather create something on my own, because I believe that's how it's kind of been. I feel like people are trying to be more entrepreneurs than they ever have before, honestly.
So I'm going to go way back in time to answer this question. This is kind of weird, I know, but I want to tell you about two companies that I remember from like more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
And one of them, that shall remain nameless, couldn't find good people, and they were just bitching and moaning about the fact that it's like Well, nobody wants to come to Indiana or to Fort Wayne to be a software engineer. No, I can't get good software people to come here. Blah blah blah. Whine, whine, whine. Poor me.
Yeah.
Uh, on the other hand, one of the entrepreneurs I worked with, Dave Corcoran, who's a marvelous individual, had a company called Trust Bearer Labs, and they were doing work in identity authentication back in, the security kind of work.
Yeah.
Before it was cool, if you will.
Mhm.
And Dave, on the other hand, was hiring people out of Microsoft that were moving out of freaking Microsoft to come to Fort Wayne to be a part of this venture.
Yeah.
You tell me the difference. The difference is, well, I can't get people to come here to Fort Wayne. I think your company sucks. I think when you talk to people, that's why he remained nameless. I think when you talk to people and you try to tell them about the culture and so forth of your company, and the job itself and the work, that they smell that this isn't the right place for them. They don't come. I think when Dave talked to people, they went, "Oh my God, this is so cool. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here, man." And
Right.
and so I think that very same sentiment has kind of increased and just been brought into the forefront recently with the debate about, do people want to work, do people not want to work? I think it's people leave companies because of other people. They leave people because of bad managers. They leave people because of the culture sucks. If you want to understand that, look at the subreddit Kitchen Confidential, which is all about people. It's a great subreddit to read. First of all, it's scary, but I think you can, as an entrepreneur, you have a duty as a founder to create a culture and to create work that is fulfilling for people. The fact that I find what I do fulfilling, and I've kind of created this role for myself almost on my own, if you will. And I don't employ a bunch of people or anything like that. But if I did, and I didn't, and if I thought they were just going to be like worker bees and drones, holy crap, that would be terrible.
Right.
I mean, you should put me out of business if that's the case. All right. So I'm totally, I'm also totally under the impression that you need to pay somebody reasonably for what they do. So part of the argument here has always gone to, like, you cheap bastards, you want to pay the cheapest minimum wage that you can, and then ask people to work their butt. No, man, come on, pay them well. Pay them well.
Exactly. You know, it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen, I've posted a few things on social media. You know, the film industry actually is probably going to have a strike here pretty soon, which is based on wages of like, you know, pay for people. So there's a group union called the IATSE, which is like a lot of like the grips and electrics, the camera people. They work on all these union jobs, like these big television shows or big films and all this kind of stuff. And basically they're going to throw a strike because the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television do not want to pay people proper wages. They don't want to give people, I guess, safer regulations on set, because, you know, there's been like a big issue with, you know, people working 14 plus hours in the industry, which honestly, that is 100% a huge issue. Like a lot of the jobs that I work on these bigger shoots, I'm usually a production assistant, and production assistants are always going to be working 12 plus hours. I'm like, you always have to count for a 13, 14-hour day as a PA. It's unfortunate, but also there's, you know, issues. There's things called meal penalties, you know, in the industry that kind of are a big thing too. Like if we don't hit the meal time at like the 6th hour, there's a whole bunch of issues. And it's funny.
So you work long hours and don't get fed?
So, well, we get fed, but sometimes, so the perfect example is actually the new Matrix movie. I worked on Matrix Resurrections. It's called Matrix 4, which I'm super, super excited about.
Wow, that's awesome, dude. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was amazing. I got to meet Keanu Reeves on Valentine's Day, and it was
Woo-hoo.
awesome. It was great. But Matrix was one of the only productions that there every single night we had worked, I want to say maybe 14 hours, 14, 15 hours. But there was one day in particular where we worked, I want to say like 19 hours one day.
Nice.
We had started at 5 p.m. because it was overnight shoot. So we started at 5 p.m., but then we didn't wrap until I want to say maybe 11 in the morning, the very next morning. And it was just super, super brutal. Super brutal. And the thing is that set has something called French hours, which is basically instead of breaking for lunch, someone will go and give you lunch while you're on set, but you're still having to work throughout the time. And it's like whenever you eat is whenever you eat. But they didn't break like an hour for lunch how they normally would on some of these like smaller shoots or non-union shoots or whatever. Just shoots usually are supposed to be like that. But there was French hours. Now that's the only production that I've done that has done something like that. No other production that I've been on has been like that, but still a lot of productions I've been on have been 14 plus hours. And I'm not union, and most of the shoots that I work on aren't always union. There's a lot of non-union jobs out here too. A lot of the union jobs are mainly like in LA, Atlanta, New York, a lot of those really, really big areas where Netflix and Apple and Amazon, these different kind of companies are doing that. And basically the people want to strike because it's like, you're not making it safe for us. You're not giving us enough money. And people want to kind of, people want to strike about that. So that's very interesting that you mentioned that and bring up that, because that has definitely seemed to be a pretty big issue, I think, not just in the film industry, but even out in these, in these other industries too, where people are not getting paid a lot. And I know Indiana, I think, kind of spiked up the minimum wage a little bit, I believe. So I think some companies are going to start to realize that, hey, without us, none of this stuff works. None of this stuff is going to go without us. So I'm hoping that change happens, pretty soon for these companies.
I look at the culture of a company and say there's nothing wrong with working your ass off once in a while. There's nothing wrong with having a time when we're going to get together and go, well, today our only chance to get this done is 19 hours, and we're going to fucking do it. Guess what? We're not going to do that every day, and we're not going to do 12 hours every day, and we're not going to do 14 every day, and expect you to kind of just live with that. We expect that every once in a while we're going to work our butts off. That's just the way you do it when you're starting up. It might be the way of doing it when you're, every film production is like a little startup almost, right?
Yeah.
So every once in a while there are going to be those things, and it's like, man, our light's going to go away, our scenes, our settings going to go away, everything's going to. If we don't do it right now, bad things happen. But guess what? Next week we're going to do something different.
Right, exactly. It's crazy. So the strike, the strike could definitely affect different jobs out here too. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm definitely in support of the strike. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how that might affect certain productions and jobs out here in the Bay. Because there hasn't been a lot of big productions that come here to the Bay Area too often. I think in January there's supposed to be another Marvel movie that's coming out here, and then another TV show coming out early next month. So we'll see how that affects them. Hopefully it doesn't affect them from coming out here and working.
So I'll just make a suggestion to you, because it just came into my head. So you've probably got some property you're working on that you want to shoot of your own. Why don't you just come back to Angola if the strike goes too out of hand? Come back to Angola and shoot something here then.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, because there's still clients I can get out there, and I feel like recently there's been much more clientele that has wanted to come work with me after seeing all the different stuff I've worked on. So yeah, definitely. I'm not too worried about how it's going to affect me necessarily. I'm saving up as much as I can at the moment, and
I'm just joking. I know you'd be fine.
So yeah, but still, I did think about that when I heard about it, I was like, all right, I might have to go back to Indiana to maybe shoot like whatever, like a commercial or a music video or something. So I was thinking about that too, because if it does happen to where a strike affects like a certain month, like say if it affects October, then it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to make a decision. And that would be that'd be the smart decision, either to do something out there or do something out here, even like, not, of course, the union stuff is for all the major stuff, and even the non-union stuff is for major stuff for these different tech companies or whatever. But at the same time, I can still definitely get some different projects done at a smaller size. But another thing I wanted to go back to is the thing you said, just fucking do it, which is so important. I think a lot of people need to hear that, because as I have mentored a few people who wanted to be creatives and everything, I think that's something that I should have said like from the beginning, because I feel like a lot of people are very, very afraid. And as you said too, like the younger folks are always usually treated as, you have so much time. This is not the time for you to do it. But truthfully, there is no perfect timing to any of this stuff. It's like, you just need to fucking do it. And I completely agree. I mean, like, I feel like more people need to hear that. And I feel like that's what makes you so essential to the community in Northeast Indiana and Fort Wayne, is nobody is saying it like that,
So we have a culture. We have a culture here in the Midwest. It's a conservative culture. I think you probably agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
And part of being a conservative culture means that we expect people to, quote, do it right.
Right.
And so what happens is that you're taught as a child, well, actually, don't get me started on education. Or if you do, it's a different subject. But what happens is that people think that they have to find the right, perfect way to do it. And startups and entrepreneurship aren't like that. I don't care how perfect you think it is. It's going to change. So the important thing is to start doing it, and then keep your eyes open and watch how you can evolve it and make it better. But you don't have to start your business. No. Another way to say it is, nobody started their business making $20 million a year in their company on their first product on day one. That's not the way it works. You work your way up to it. There's a wonderful book called Founders at Work that was written by Jessica Livingston, who is the wife of Paul Graham, who together they founded Y Combinator. And Founders at Work is this bunch of stories about a bunch of tech founders, kind of from almost a generation ago, but a lot of these tech founders, and literally half, I mean the word literally half of the stories, the tech companies went big doing something that was entirely different than what they started their company to do. They started their company thinking it would be X, and then they found Y, and then they went big. So they just did it. They got started. You're not going to find all the opportunities unless you start. So that's what I think is important. And I think that culturally you have to overcome that thought about being perfect. And I hate the phrase fail early and fail often. I'd like to rephrase all of that stuff, because the word fail has a negative connotation to it. So it's basically start and then use all the things that don't work exactly right as learning opportunities. Every startup needs to understand that things won't make sense for a little while. And your job of a startup is to discover the ways that your business makes sense.
Absolutely.
Or to get to the point where you discover that it probably never will, and then you stop and you do something else. But basically, just it won't necessarily all make perfect sense to begin with. And,
and
that's
I
what
think
makes startup so much fun.
Absolutely. And I think what makes it great for you and just the community is that there's not, I feel like when it comes to these businesses and entrepreneurs and just, certain communities, people like to be very clean cut and don't like to say it how it is. So sometimes you have to add the fucking to just do it. You know what I mean? You got to just fucking do it. I feel like you need to do that. I think that's why people love like people like Gary Vee or Andy Frisella. Like they just kind of say it in a very realistic and blunt type of way. And I feel like people respect that much more because sometimes if people are, at least from my opinion, in my perspective, and people would say it from a clean cut situation, not all the time, but sometimes I feel like it's not always as genuine as someone who's just going to cuss at me, but still like, encourage me to do something.
I tend to do that for emphasis, and I do that on purpose, by the way.
Yeah.
And I've had people look at me like I was like a terrible person. It's like,
yeah, because you got clean cut people sometimes.
You heard it though, didn't you? You
Yeah.
got the point, didn't you?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
So I don't use the word fucking in every other sentence.
Right. just for the emphasis. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Just for the emphasis. I like it. All right. So I want to break off now into talking a little bit more in depth about just some of the community of entrepreneurs and creatives in Fort Wayne. You advocate so much for Northeast Indiana and Fort Wayne when it comes to the different things that people are creating. I guess what makes you believe in the strength in the weight of Fort Wayne and its entrepreneurial community? Like what makes you believe in the community of Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana so much for this type of work?
Why wouldn't you believe?
Yeah. Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
So I mean, people are no different here than they are anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is going to start a company. Not everybody that starts a company is going to try to do something that's a big scalable company. Part of we're, by the time this airs, we'll be closer to a thing that I'm going to be doing in 2022. That basically through the nonprofit that I work with, Believe in a Dream, I'm reinstituting some of the youth coaching programs that I had before, and I'm breaking it off into like an accelerator-ish program for companies that are already launched, high school students, and maybe some college students who are strictly for them. But then there's this other group that are basically doing exploration. They're not quite sure if they want to be an entrepreneur. And so it's always been the failure mode for some of the other accelerators that occurred, because people our assumption was that if you signed up for this accelerator program, that you were all in and you were going to make it happen. And some of the people then would get partway through it and they wouldn't do the work. They wanted to talk about it and they wanted to think about it and they wanted to play on paper, but they never really did the work. So it's not as if Fort Wayne has an inordinate amount of people that just play around and don't do the work. I think the same is true everywhere you go. Culturally, the Bay Area might be a little more advanced because it's like embedded in the culture. I visited Boulder once and on behalf of another nonprofit here through a friend of mine, Nick Arnett, and we went to the object was to go to different cities and talk to their entrepreneurial and their community and other leaders and find out what made things work there and then bring that back to Fort Wayne. So in Boulder, the first person I talked to was a 16-year-old entrepreneur who, who met me for coffee in the middle of the day during finals week at his high school. It was like, well, I don't really need to be there. I can, come on, I'll introduce you to the city. And when I asked him about something to do with the difference between just a regular business person and an entrepreneur, he just looked at me very quizzically, like the RCA dog, and basically said, so what? There is no difference. If you're in business, you're entrepreneurial. And that's the attitude that he had. And that's the attitude that a lot of people in Boulder had. And I think that's the attitude that's more prevalent in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the attitude that we need to work toward here in Northeast Indiana. So why not? I mean, you have to be willing to skate where the puck is going. You have to be willing to try to work towards something. As opposed to just accept the way the past has always been. And from my vantage point, that's why I do what I do. It's like, why I have to have an outlook that says that Fort Wayne, Northeast Indiana, Angola, and by the way, there are a lot of cool people in Angola doing a lot of cool entrepreneurial things. That all of these people in all these communities can be just as highly entrepreneurially successful as anybody in the Bay Area, anybody in Austin, anybody in New York City, anybody in Atlanta, etc.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, so
you're kind of proof of that, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Nah, definitely. I mean, I think, it's interesting because like when I first went to the Atrium and got to meet everybody, all these different types of folks, it definitely made me just like appreciate how much more people are really trying to like create something for the city or create something that, that they might want to be nationwide or however worldwide. And, one thing that I forget the site, I don't know if it's 1 Million Cups website or there's some website that Dylan showed me like a while ago where it just had a list of all these different kind of tech companies that are being created in Northeast Indiana. And it was just really cool to like see the different logos, kind of go on their websites and check some of their stuff out. It's just cool because it introduces, at least how I look at different things is I look at how can I help people? How can I reach out to somebody and, shoot a commercial for them? That's my main interest, when I see these different companies and meeting these different people is like, okay, well, how can we help each other? How can I help them, market themselves? Because of course, marketing, especially nowadays, is like I would say in the top 3 and not even 3 or 2 might be the number 1 tool that these businesses have to use because social media is taken over, and I feel like, just marketing yourself on social media it needs to happen more often. But I guess my certain kind of opinions on like the entrepreneurial community is I feel like the entrepreneurial community in Fort Wayne is definitely, it's strong. There's a lot more entrepreneurs than, like I said, than I had ever expected, ever thought. You're seeing a lot of people doing a lot of amazing stuff. There's a lot of organizations like 1 Million Cups. I remember going to, I think maybe 1 or 2 of those events and then showing up to, Aaron's Founder Spark event. There's a lot more events and organizations that are popping up to try to make this more of a prominent thing. And I think that's great because there's, it's the second biggest city. If Fort Wayne didn't have something like that, I feel like it would be kind of a loss a little bit. I feel like at the rate that Fort Wayne is growing, it's important. Kind of back to what you said about the company, hiring people from Microsoft. You're starting to kind of see that more often a little bit. The Bay Area, while the Bay Area is great, it's ridiculously expensive, And a lot of people are leaving California and leaving some of these different, like really expensive places and moving to these smaller cities to kind of help grow those economies. I mean, if you look at like Austin, Texas, which is not really one of the like bigger cities like that, it's growing at a crazy rate. Once the Tesla factory gets created out there, that's about to be even more of a booming economical situation over there. And, I feel like Fort Wayne is growing at a certain rate that is just trying to make things a little bit better. But specifically, though, do you think that Fort Wayne has the potential to possibly grow to like the size of like an Austin, Texas? Not maybe in population wise, but just as far as like where it stands right now, do you think it could grow to like the size of the economy of like a an Austin, Texas, or maybe like we'll say like an Indianapolis? Like, do you think that the entrepreneurs and the different businesses in the city are helping to grow that to that potential?
So I think there are two ways that cities approach making that happen. And I think the economic development people here started focusing on just sheer numbers of people that are living here.
Yeah.
And they had goals to have more people come to the city. And like I said, the old school economic development people always have their eye on, let's go find a company and have them move here and, and drag 1,000 new workers here with it, or something like that, or create 1,000 new jobs. I don't see any reason why we can't grow them from the ground up.
Yeah.
Like I said, nobody else started the company making $20 million in their first, at a run rate of $20 million on day one. What did Amazon, how many products did Amazon sell when they got started? One, they sold books. Come on, we can start somewhere, we can grow things. And Fort Wayne has always been a little too unassuming and a little aw shucks kind of way to kind of not even talk about some of the modern tech companies that are already here. And I frankly, I made a list, and there are a few companies around here that have done really well in tech enabled fields. 3VG located down on the landing. Alex Smith and Shane Arugio and their third partner, whose name I don't remember, have done really well and attracted a few $1 million in venture capital, which is, people say you don't get venture capital in Fort Wayne like you do in the Bay Area. Well, we don't in quantity, but we have companies that have. 3BG being one of them, Allied Payment Systems, Ralph Marcaselli's company being another one, and then look at companies like Sweetwater Sound. Sweetwater Sound has grown amazingly.
Crazy. I actually just seen at that rental house, Ranahan. I walked in to go pick up a cube truck one day, and I seen a whole bunch of Sweetwater stickers like inside of the and I was like, I stopped the person. I was like, yo, I said, this is like in my hometown where I was born. Like, this is kind of crazy. I thought that was kind of amazing. I was like, I cannot believe it. But then when you think about it, with the stuff that Sweetwater has and, these different productions, it kind of makes sense. Like, some of them might be getting a lot of their stuff from Sweetwater. So that's really awesome.
So they're like a world leader e-commerce. Shindigs is another company that's located in downtown Fort Wayne that does that. We have various insurance companies that you can consider to be tech companies.
Vera Bradley's another big one.
Yeah.
Vera Bradley, yeah.
So I think that Fort Wayne needs to kind of, but at the same time, we also have a strong contingent that thinks that we need to worry about our legacy industries. It's like automotive is the answer. Like that was one of the
Grody is leading the pack.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say that. So from our history, which might be a little bit before your time, by the way, International Harvester was like a huge manufacturing company here, and they manufactured trucks like Scouts and things like that. And when they left to go to Ohio, a couple of years later, we had brought in a GM facility. And so all of a sudden, the people here in Fort Wayne were like, see, automotive is always going to be our savior. And so I think there are some people here that worried about automotive and manufacturing and healthcare manufacturing and things like that, and just basically didn't want to increase other new modern tech companies. That's what I think is important. And that's why I think it's important to know that we can do it, that we already have a bunch of people here that do tech. There's no reason we can't grow that. And whether it
Mhm.
grows to be as well known in that field as Austin or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Austin got their start by having uh, some city or government support for the semiconductor industry. And a lot of that was done very specifically in mind with a lot of government subsidies to bring in people that were going to work in the semiconductor industry and be professors as well uh, in some of the universities there. So they specifically drew that. If you look at their origin story of how they got into tech, they really got their start very purposefully. And Fort Wayne and Allen County and anything in Northeast Indiana, we mainly think about our legacy industries as opposed
Mhm.
to the fact that we could maybe start a whole new one like Austin did. And
Yeah.
I've always felt bad about that.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's great. While now it's like there's trying to be a more bigger emphasis on helping out these different like companies that are starting up. And because yeah, definitely the legacy companies, a lot of people think about those. And it's always interesting to kind of see the size of different companies, from back home. Like Sweetwater, I think I forget when I kind of really started to know more about Sweetwater. It's definitely probably right after I came back from college in 2016 is when I started to realize like, oh, Sweetwater is a lot bigger than I ever had expected, and then it even just occurred like that again. Like I said, when I seen those stickers here in the Bay Area, I was like, oh, that's crazy. But I remember a business I worked with called Wenzel Metal Spinning. I did a commercial for them. They're based in Fremont, Indiana, or at least their headquarters is in Fremont, Indiana. They have a space in Angola and they have a place in Alabama. And I didn't realize that they're the biggest metal spinning factory in America, which was
Wow.
really, really cool, and to just
Awesome.
kind of hear that was like kind of homegrown, right in my hometown. It just felt kind of cool to see that. And of course it felt good to, to give them a commercial and to kind of help push that kind of message out there too. Because, not a whole lot of people know about metal spinning. So it was kind of just cool to give that opportunity for them to
And
introduce themselves
I don't
to
even
more
know what
folks.
metal spinning is.
Yeah. I mean, they create a lot of parts for like, different industries, like in the agriculture industry to stuff that they may use in the military. They actually created some certain pieces of architecture for one of the Fast and Furious movies. Like they've done a lot of really cool stuff. So it was cool to kind
Nice.
of see the behind the scenes of everything that they've done.
Awesome.
But for all the different companies that you've came across and have all the different people you've met, has there been one business, one startup that has stuck out to you the most? One that was like one to where you thought, wow, this is one of the most innovative companies that could possibly be created, and it's one of those companies that you kind of knew would have a pretty big success.
So I'm going to answer that by going back to a guy I talked about earlier, Dave Corcoran. And uh, uh, Dave's, I'm going to talk about another company as well, but first let me start with Dave, because I have a couple people that impressed me that way. Number one, Dave got his start when he was in college at Purdue by working on an open source project and got to know everybody in the identity authentication industry by being involved in running an open source project. When he started doing his consulting work, which eventually turned into the TrustBearer Labs product work, you could tell that they had something special going on, that they knew their shit, if you will.
Yeah.
And then their company got sold, got acquired, if you will. And he moved on to another company that now exists called Census, CENSYS. And it's based in Ann Arbor, where he lives part-time. He also has some property still around Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And So basically, he started up another company after Prospera Labs that was drawing at an even more fast and furious. Sorry about the pun. You used the words, I didn't. At a fast and furious rate. And so sometimes it's not companies, it's people.
Yeah.
So Dave recently stepped down from as the CEO of Census because he realized that Census was now at the point where they needed somebody to run it that was really good at scaling businesses to be huge. And that's not his passion, and that's not his love. His love is starting things. So he was like, I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to let somebody else that really knows how to scale things, let them do that. And I'm going to go find out what's my next company.
Right.
So that's exactly what he's doing right now. Yeah, he's looking for what's next.
Wow.
Yeah. And the other company and person that I'd like to talk about is Herb Swartz, who was like one of my very first clients at the Innovation Center. Schwartz Biomedical, and so he started doing different orthopedic related products and dealing with biomaterials. And he started with one product called BioDuct, which helped bring this will sound gross, but it's your body can't heal a wound unless it's got blood flow. So he would bring blood flow to the parts of a torn meniscus. So you're an athlete. You've heard of people with torn meniscus. And typically the old school way, if it was in a part of the meniscus that didn't have blood flow and couldn't heal, they would just cut it out. It was like, crap, that's terrible. So he found a way to fix that. That part of this business got acquired. His next product, called BioPoly, was something that basically created a new and improved type of material that could be used to create meniscus, for example, to create cartilage, and that's being used all over the place now in different joints throughout the body. But it took forever to get going because our system here in the U.S. requires so much regulation that it was easier for him, as in most orthopedic companies, to start in Europe, which he did. But I admire people like that who are creating really cool things. One of my favorite entrepreneurs is Dr. Melanie Watson, who teaches at Trine University.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she
homegrown.
Homegrown, man. So I don't know how far along she is in her business. At this point, it's been a while since I've been in touch, but she had a daughter that had some physical problems, and as a result was very susceptible to illness, and like going into a hospital environment that was germy and all that stuff was like not for her. And she had to do that a lot because she needed blood tests all the time. And so Dr. Watson, she teaches fluid dynamics, biofluid dynamics. I was like, well, I could create a better way to do that. So she's created better ways to do blood tests. And she's in the process of getting that started. But again, the regulatory stuff is like pretty incredible. And so it's going to take a while for all that to come about. And I really don't know where she sits in the process anymore. But incredible creators that really see a need and want to create a new thing. In every one of those cases. And that's what I admire. I'm sorry, I just keep going on.
Oh no,
you asked me for one name, and I'm going to give you the fourth.
It's all good. It's great because I'm going to eventually probably look these people up myself just to see some of the stuff they've done.
I just sat on the little rooftop lounge of 3BG, who have their
Yeah.
offices on the landing, with Alex Smith, and was talking with Alex, one of the founders.
Yeah.
When I met him, it was right before we started Founders, and I don't know how we managed to do this, but we shared some office space with some folks down in the almost like a dungeon-like little basement of the Star Bank building down on
Oh,
Harrison
wow.
Berry. And
Interesting.
and Alex and his partner were down there, and that's when they started 3BG.
Yeah.
And we had some crazy people that were down there that were just, I don't know, just doing stuff. It wasn't even a company. It was like just a predecessor to a co-working space almost.
Yeah.
Bunch of crazy bastards that were working on whatever. And now he has this company that employs over 50 people with a wonderful office down on the landing. And took an industry that was old school and found a way to make it digitally enabled. So he helps people buy parts like ball bearings, crap like that, for machinery, but it's all digitally enabled. Where in the past they had to look things up in paper catalogs and all this other stuff, and he's got it all digitally enabled now, and just it's a really awesome business. And they're growing really, really well. So sometimes I admire growth, but mostly I admire invention, and the fact that he found a cool new way to disrupt this industry. And the same for Dave, and the same for Dr. Watson, and the same for Herb. I just admire that.
That's
so
great.
Much. So
that's
sorry,
awesome.
I'll stop there.
No, I know there's a whole list of people that you could bring up, and that's great. I think they're, if they happen to listen and watch this, they'll appreciate that. And it's cool that you mentioned someone from Angola, and because me personally, there's something interesting that has been created in Angola recently that I thought was kind of an interesting inclusion to Angola. So
tell me about that.
Yeah, so there's an apartment complex that got made in Angola, and my mom, shout out to my mom. So my mom is also a fan of yours, by the way. My mom wanted me to let you know that. My mom has seen you comment and support people and stuff on Facebook, and my mom has been a fan of that. So that's just one thing. But my mom knows the mayor and speaks to the mayor sometimes of Angola, and this apartment complex, apparently from the mayor, was talked about being a apartment complex that is catered towards entrepreneurs and creatives. And when I heard that, I kind of like laughed inside a little bit.
So is this the one that's being created right around the
Henry Park?
The Enterprise.
Yeah, no. So it's near Henry Park, which is an elementary school. And it's like, I'm trying to think what else is in that area. Like there's not really a whole lot of businesses, at least businesses that come to mind that are near.
It's not by the EDC Center and all that stuff.
No, I mean I think it's close enough near that area.
I know they had plans to do something like that.
Yeah,
I didn't think they were quite ready to launch it.
Yeah. So this apartment complex, my brother lives in there now, has moved in. And shout out to my brother, but my brother's not necessarily in that space of like an entrepreneur or creative space, I would say, not yet, at least. And it's interesting just when talking to my mom and my brother about when they moved in, how it wasn't really a whole lot of people who were entrepreneurs and creatives. It's just people who want to find a new apartment, which makes sense because there's not too many apartment complexes that are of good quality sometimes in Angola, and I think Angola needs more stuff like that, so that's great. But I think to say that it's catered towards a certain type of community, I don't think is I feel like that's kind of just lying to themselves a little bit, because here's how I look at Angola, right? I love Angola, but Angola doesn't have, there might be some creatives there, but the creatives don't have any sort of resources to knowing who or what other creatives there are in the city or in the town. So nobody knows each other. And I don't think there's not, some people might get scared of trying to market themselves to people in Angola, because some people might not, find it or care or whatever. And then entrepreneurs in Angola, I think it's cool to market towards that. But how I looked at it is that the entrepreneurs that a lot of people might think of in Angola are much more older than someone who's my age or, in high school or something like that. So those people already have homes and
Nothing
property. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. The people already have homes and property that they wouldn't move into an apartment complex. So I thought it was a little strange.
Maybe.
I thought it was a little strange to say that that's catered towards that, because I feel like while that is great, I feel like Angola needs an apartment complex, but they do not just saying it's catered for that is not good, because, at least in my opinion, just because there's not enough resources in that space to kind of help people out. People have to go to Fort Wayne, which is not that far, of course, but people have to go to Fort Wayne to find more of those resources to get an opportunity to get their stuff, marketed correctly, or just to, help build up their business in different ways. And Angola doesn't have that necessarily.
Will you allow me to try to change your mind?
Yes, please. No, definitely. Absolutely. Please do.
So first of all, you know that I could say the very same thing about Fort Wayne. It's like in Fort Wayne, the entrepreneurial communities and the arts community sometimes stays kind of hidden. People don't know, blah, 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 blah. And so there's probably a larger arts community and a larger entrepreneurial community in Angola than you know. Just like there's a larger arts and entrepreneurial community in Fort Wayne than I know, even though I've been hanging around. I keep finding new parts of the community that I knew nothing about, new people. Secondly, it's important to realize that the way they talk about it's for entrepreneurs and creatives, that means that they've received some government subsidies that allow them to bring in people with those credentials at a little lesser expense. So that's why they're doing that. Is that there was a little financial need to make that happen. I've seen it be highly successful in places like Decatur. Think about that. When you think about Decatur versus Angola's bigger, man. But down in Decatur, they have a community that's like an artist's loft studio space, and they do the very same thing. It was done with that sort of incentive in mind to bring in people and to create a space. And they don't have to already be there. Maybe they'll move there.
Yeah.
And so I see it's been more successful to do something like that outside of Fort Wayne. I don't see much of that in Fort Wayne proper, but I've seen it be highly successful in Decatur, and I hope it's highly successful in Angola.
Yeah, no, I think so. I hope it's successful too.
Did I change your mind?
A little bit, maybe just in the perspective of, I just think specifically there might be a bigger entrepreneurial and arts community than I know for sure. But, I guess how I look at it and just how I kind of, because how I usually study things, I guess, is I look at some of the different inspirations that I have, what inspires me, whether it's certain films or certain individuals or certain companies. And, one thing that I like to do a lot, and I don't do it consistently all the time, but I always like to market myself in a very specific way, and I feel like marketing is something that I feel like a lot of creatives, specifically entrepreneurs, kind of take them out of the conversation, but marketing, well, entrepreneurs be still in that same spot, but I think creatives in particular, and I think this happens a lot in Fort Wayne as well, is that the creatives don't know each other, because it's not necessarily because they don't market as often, but I feel like a lot of people aren't putting as much profit into their marketing and promoting themselves out there, to get more opportunities for people to get a chance to see their work and see what they're creating and see what they're doing in the city and in other places. And I feel like that kind of hinders, well, it doesn't hinder, but it doesn't help the growth a little bit if people aren't getting an opportunity to kind of figure out who this person is and collaborate with each other. I mean, Angola is such a small place that literally growing up in Angola, I never never seen a whole lot of other creatives ever in Angola. And even to this day, there's a few people that I see sprouting up and everything, but you know, there's not much. I almost consider myself I would definitely consider myself one of the only more, I guess, successful creatives maybe in Angola that's kind of, getting a little bit more notoriety recently, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
So I have two comments. The first is, yes, you're really good at marketing what you do. Anybody who knows like the least little bit about you is going to know what the word cinematic excellence.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it's like poof right there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The nonprofit that I work with, we work with youth in leadership, and we help them understand their strengths, how to be leaders, and how to roll that all together into a personal brand. Your personal brand is 2 words, and people understand that. And so kudos for that. I'll also say that I've had conversations with Dan Swartz, who spent time in the arts community in New York City before returning to Fort Wayne to start Wunderkammer and so forth. You have to understand, which I think you do because you're there, that you can't thrive, you can hardly even probably live marketing your art in Angola or Fort Wayne. You need to market your stuff large to larger art communities, to people that buy art in Miami, people that buy art in LA. It just because you live here and create here doesn't mean that's where your customers are.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think one of the things that I think that it's important to what you're talking about, and that is that I don't see as many in Fort Wayne, or I don't see as many in Angola, is the fact that sometimes the ones that are highly successful have figured out that my customers are in Miami or Atlanta or New York, and they move there to be around them. It's more difficult to sell to people in New York City if you're living in Angola or Fort Wayne.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring that up too, because it kind of leads me back to leads me to something I remember Aaron sharing on Facebook of the that question that sparks up talking about do you believe that I forget how it was worded, but do you believe that you can't be successful in Indiana, or do you believe that Indiana is stopping your success? So I remember seeing something that he had shared like that. And I remember I spoke to another person on the podcast, shout out Trinity Treft, who's an amazing photographer. I spoke to her about that as well. And I want to get your kind of question on that or your answer on that, because I obviously I believe that no matter where you are, you can find success. Like the fact that I am having some pretty good success here in the Bay Area, I feel like I can definitely have success in Angola. And I had success when I was there, even though it was so much more minute and a little bit smaller size than a lot of the stuff I'm doing now. I still had a lot of success in Angola, Fort Wayne, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll continue to kind of bring different things there. But I mean, do you think that, like, I think that personally, like if I try to look at like a perspective of me staying in Angola now, like if I did move to California, I always think about that. Like, what would life be like if I didn't move at the end of 2019? It's hard to imagine what could be. Like I would imagine I would still be doing a lot of things for SW Films and working with a lot of different local businesses and stuff like that in Fort Wayne or Angola. But it is sometimes hard to think at this particular level that I've been at, would I be there? Would I have that opportunity to work on these different projects? Maybe yes. I mean, luckily, my cousin, shout out Hilton Day, is a person who's been here in the industry, who's the first assistant director here out in the Bay Area, very, very successful AD out here. And, it's like, of course, I have him as a resource to where I could, be working and stuff in California. But I couldn't imagine not moving to California and being as successful. It's kind of hard to picture that, to be honest.
I think the answer is that you could be successful anywhere, but it might be different.
Yeah. That's a great answer. Yeah.
And I think the wisdom that you had to say, I'm going to go where it is. I'm going to go to the epicenter, man.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go out there and live, and I'm going to learn. You're the second person that I've heard say that. Ben Richards was the other. It's like, when I graduate from IU, I know you don't want to hear it here in Indiana, but I'm going to go to the West Coast. And I hope to be back, but I'm going to the West Coast because that's where it's at, man. So, could you be successful having never left Angola or Fort Wayne? Absolutely. Would it look different than what it is? Would you have met Kinu? Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
Right. Yeah.
But it could it be some other form of success?
Yeah.
Again, just Sweetwater Sound. Chuck knows every major musician in the freaking country, if not the world, because he's
crazy.
Sold them stuff, right?
Yeah.
So is it impossible to be successful out of Fort Wayne? Heck no. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And
there's so much talent too. I mean, just even outside of like the creative and entrepreneur space, well, even still in it, like Jalen Smith, who has started some businesses in Fort Wayne now. iCryo, he's a big part of that.
Yep.
He has the sunglasses brand with Jamal Robinson.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of opportunities for sure. And I think Fort Wayne, obviously being a bigger city is definitely more susceptible to that being more marketed out there. And I think Angola specifically, like, I want to be one of the people to bring more of those opportunities and that idea of that level of success to that small town. That's something that has always been on my mind and something that I want to do. Because I feel like it's just needed. There was never, as I was growing up, I'd never seen any of that. A lot of that stuff I just kind of had to just get out there and just fucking do it. You know what I mean? So
I cannot express enough of how I admire the way you approach that. I mean, that's just fucking awesome. To think about your community from that vantage point. There are, Fort Wayne and Angola, and how many, if I had $1 for every time I've heard somebody say, I can't wait to get the hell out of here. You heard, it, right?
Yeah. Plenty of time. Yeah.
And so it's totally refreshing and just totally admirable to hear you go, I may leave to cut my chops on everything out in the Bay Area and LA and the West Coast, but I love where I grew up. And
yeah.
I'm gonna be back, and I'm gonna help it.
Exactly.
Do things.
Exactly. Like, I would even say
with people like you doing with attitudes like that, then every area is going to grow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what it is. And I think it's interesting, just my experiences to the Bay to Indiana, because, I've met people who have grown up in like these really big cities, like San Jose or San Francisco, Oakland, like these places that are just have, so huge population. And it's kind of interesting, certain attitudes, towards different type of things, and like, and wanting to create stuff, because I feel like being from a small town really has helped like the fire kind of grow within myself, to want to go out and do certain things. I feel like some people, not all people, but some people who grew up in these bigger cities, they have seen more things and, had more opportunities or whatever, to where they're maybe not always enthused to make a move towards something that they want to do. Just because they think maybe they could already do it, or they think it's easy, they can get to it whenever. I feel like in a small town, I had no other choice. At least that's how I grew up. This is how I felt about it. But I feel like specifically, even an even bigger step was mainly going to, honestly, when I came back from college and came back to Indiana, I feel like that was more of a bigger step almost than me moving to California, because California was one of those things that was kind of it was right ahead. It was something that I knew was coming.
It was going to happen.
Yeah. It was going to happen. But moving back home, I didn't really expect that to happen. And I remember when I moved back home, I actually wasn't all that excited, because at the time, none of my friends were really doing much. Obviously Dylan at the time was just starting Quick Eats. Before he had started Cart, he was doing a whole bunch of different stuff. But a lot of my friends, a lot of people I was close with at the time, wasn't really doing too much work, or wasn't it wasn't anything that I was moved with, because I was so you know, I was so enthused about doing everything with film and trying to get things started, you know, in that industry that, you know, I was like, Angola is not going to have what I want. But luckily, I made a lot of opportunities happen, which was amazing. And I feel like that was a bigger risk. And kind of back on that, you know, just of how I approach it, I felt like I had to take a lot of we'll call it eggs on the face a few times just to get to that spot, because there was a while where I think a lot of people think I hated Angola, because I remember I made a post about Angola one time on Facebook. This is back in 2014.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and it was funny. Well, it was a post. I was asking people. I said I think I said something about the school, Angola High School. I said something about, you know, what do you guys think is going on? Do you think that what do you think Angola is going down the shithole, whatever? I said a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I remember so many, I always reshare the post whenever it comes. It's always, it was like in October sometime. I should reshare it because it was one of those things that it started up such a huge controversy. Everybody was like having these conversations. People were talking about how they hate Angola. People were talking about how they love Angola. And a lot of people who loved Angola were these people I kind of like, you know, I'll call them the more preppier folks, or the people I may have like played sports with, or like whatever. And they all commented on it. And some people put me in the crosshairs, and I got attacked for it. And like relationships I had with certain people completely died off during that time.
Wow.
And it was a big thing. And I just remember like, it was just so funny, you know, because I just talked about specifically my thoughts about Angola, and just about, and the thing is my family has a really huge history in Angola. My family was the first Black family to live in the town of Angola, which is a huge deal. You know, like a lot of Black folks, you know, when they moved out in that area were, you know, kind of told to go live at Fox Lake, or that's where they would go, just because Fox Lake had a bigger Black community at the time. But no one lived in the town of Angola until my family kind of stumbled in there. And, you know, my family just has a huge history. A lot of people know my mom, my Uncle John, my aunts, and all, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the thing is Angola has such a deep rooted history for me, where I feel like I have no other choice but to make an impact in a way that would really benefit the creative and entrepreneurial space out there. I think it needs to happen. I think it's something that I've been striving for. And we're still on the road there. You know, it's a long ways to go, but you know, I think we're on a good path so far.
You can sometimes you can say things that will offend people, even though what you're saying is something that shows that you really fucking care.
Yeah. And I think,
you know, and I think you can, you know, I can sense that what you're doing is you've come out of this, not with this feeling of, well, screw it, but with this feeling of, I'm more enthused than ever about
exactly
staying in touch. So,
exactly. Yes. And I'm thankful and grateful for the family history, because I think without that, would I feel the same necessarily? I don't know. That's kind of hard to think about. Probably not. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. There's, you know, I think it just comes with my experience, how I grew up, how I observed everything.
When did your family come to Angola?
I want to say it was like in the 50s, maybe in the 40s, maybe like or late 40s, because not late 40s. I don't want to say that. My Uncle John, he's about to be 70 next year. So he was like a baby when they first got in Angola, and how they got into Angola too.
That'd be the 50s then for sure.
Yeah.
because I am 70. I just turned 70.
Of course, happy belated birthday.
And I was born in 51. So
yeah,
it wouldn't have been the 40s.
I forget how old exactly he was, but I know he was a baby, and my Aunt Peggy was still alive, and she was like, she was probably like 5 or 6 or something at the time. But I know that they came there what happened was my Uncle John was born in like Philadelphia, and then they were traveling. I forget where they were traveling. I think they maybe either were traveling back to Philadelphia, they were traveling somewhere else, and basically their car like broke down in Angola, you know. And it's crazy because, you know, obviously back then it was more of like they did not get meted with any sort of happiness or welcoming situation. You know, there was a lot of people out there who just were kind of patronizing them, obviously, because, black folks, and a majority of like white people in the town. It was kind of like, okay, you should probably be in Fox Lake, go to Fox Lake. And basically, yeah, and basically is when the car broke down, he was trying to find some help. No one in the town would help him. So he had to end up walking, which I think they broke down in the mound area of Angola, which is like basically the center of Angola. And they broke down and he had to walk to go to Fox Lake to try to find somebody of his own who looks like him to help him out. And while that happened, my grandmother and my aunt and uncle were in the car, still had the doors locked, but a bunch of people were out there shaking and pushing the car. It was like a pariah of just like wanting them to get the hell out. But after that,
so the crazy part is then your family was like, this looks like a cool place to live.
Well, I think what my grandfather, what he wanted to do is I think his stubbornness and his just he wasn't fearful about any of that. Like he was just like, you know what? Nah, you're not gonna tell me that I can't be in this area. Like I'm gonna stay here and grow. And what he did is he built up so much respect. He created his own construction excavation company, which my uncle, who was a child at the time, now owns.
Sounds like your personality too, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Once as I grow older and hear about my grandfather, I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to see that, I'm kind of in that same position. I feel like, other cousins that I have are in that kind of same position of just being in that spot. So I think just, because of that history, I think Angola definitely does have a special place. Like I'm definitely aware.
That's pretty cool.
I'm aware of all the negatives and I guess some of the critical, stuff that I might be, critical on about Angola. But at the same time, it's like, I want to try to do my best to try to fix those things that might be deemed negative. I think one thing about Angola that is starting to be a little bit more crazy to kind of see it happen a little bit more often now, but like I'm starting to see a lot more like color in Angola. Like I've seen more black people in Angola. I've seen just more different cultures starting to move in there, which is kind of interesting to me. Because Angola is such a small town. I don't really know. Initially, I wouldn't really know what the appeal would be unless you're into like maybe the lake life. That's obviously a big thing out in the Steuben County area. But maybe Trine brings in tons of people. So Trine is actually probably the biggest proponent of that. So I'm just thinking about where can I be to help people out in that space. And I feel like it starts with, doing the infrastructure within the place, not necessarily me being there, but me allowing and trying to bring back a little bit more knowledge, So one of the things I want to do is, create like a networking event in Angola specifically. Because like I said, I want to meet these entrepreneurs and creatives, no matter what age, no matter what creed and color, whatever. I want to meet folks and just get them to work with each other and me possibly work with them as well. That's one of my bigger goals for the next year, actually, cool. Is to do that. So that's something I plan on doing. Actually, that's something I want to do the very next time I come back to Indiana is probably do that. But I just need to kind of get all my ducks in order and the money around, to find everything I need. Because I want to offer something to these folks instead of just getting them to meet people. I want to offer like something that, real valuable knowledge. So that'd be something where I would be like, yo, Steve, I need you to come up to Angola to come talk to these folks.
Most definitely.
Because it helps.
So I let the conversation go on long enough until I finally thought of what I posted on Aaron's question.
Yeah.
And I finally I couldn't remember it first, but now I
have.
So my response to, can you be successful here or do you have to go somewhere else was, just remember wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah, I really like that comment too, because I'm like, it makes a lot of sense.
Not original. It's not an original comment with me, and I don't remember who said it, but it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's true. That is very true. And you think about it, like there's in a lot of these major places, at least, there's successful people, I think, in those spots, and even in these smaller places, there's people who are doing some amazing things behind closed doors to get things,
sure.
bubbling up. So it's it just takes that one individual. It just takes that one person with a really cool idea or a really cool thing that they want to create or whatever, and to spark it up. So I mean, absolutely. I think it doesn't matter. Indiana, there's a lot of successful opportunities in Indiana. It's just being innovative because you never know. It could take that one movie in Indiana to really spark people to really want to check out certain things in the state, which funny enough, there's this movie called Columbus. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it was shot in Columbus, Indiana. And there's like a whole bunch of history about Columbus, Indiana that I never knew about. But I had met a few people who had worked on that movie, and they were like, yeah, Columbus is known for a big architectural kind of history and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And, the fact that movie had went to, I think, like Sundance or one of the bigger film festivals, that's a nice look into that, you know what I mean? So I feel like more movies, at least in the film industry talks, is like stuff like that can introduce a lot of people to stuff, which is something I want to do. You remember my feature that I'm still planning, Indents of a Snowflake. It's copyrighted, people don't try to take it, but but basically, I want to shoot that in my hometown. I want to shoot that in Angola. So it just takes that one thing to introduce to people, to kind of see that, no, it doesn't matter where you go, wherever you are, you can be successful. You just got to be innovative and collaborate with, people and have a good attitude about stuff.
Yep. And that'll actually draw other people like that.
Yeah.
To come be a part as well.
Exactly. To move on with the questions here. Quickly, I want to get like your opinion. I want to get your perspective of what do you think about the creative scene in Fort Wayne? Like, what is your, I guess, because the entrepreneurial scene and creative scene, I split those up. Sometimes there's a mix of both, and there should be a mix of both. People should understand that if you want to be a creative and you want to make money with your art and stuff that you do, that you have to have a business side of it. But what is your opinion on, I guess, how Fort Wayne's creative scene stands right now?
Excuse me, the biggest changes in our creative economy right now are twofold. One, certain like gallery for the visual arts, certain gallery sites, venues, if you will, and places like the Cinema Center, I think I have really suffered from the pandemic, and they need to kind of work their way back.
Right.
So Cinema Center has a new executive director. She's like awesome, cool.
Chanel, I think that's the
Chanel,
one. Right?
Yeah.
It's a great shout out to Chanel. Yeah.
She's just a wonderful person.
Oh yeah.
And she can't make shit happen. Nobody can. So, but it needs to come back. Some of the gallery spaces around town stopped and closed. Trisha Cavender moved to Texas, and so her gallery got shut down. A new one popped up. A couple new ones, I should say, have popped up. There's like a gallery space called Bread and Circus inside Wunderkammer. Started by Ashley Beatty Kopang and her partner, whose name I can't remember. Sorry. And then another one that started up like right down the block. So if you remember that block, it's Wunderkammer and then Brava's, what used to be Brava's, and that's now changed into like a place that sells great chicken. And then on the other side of it is a thing called Studio 7.
I think I've seen that.
And then after that is the new Brava's place, which will be coming online. They moved to the other corner. So Studio 7 is new, and they I just saw them for the first time not too recently, or not too long ago, and so they swap out a bunch of artists like all the time, and I knew none of the artists that they were exhibiting, and I've been hanging around this scene for a long time, so that's why I say that the community, it keeps growing. So, ArtLink is different. There's a new director of ArtLink, and they still show a lot of things. I can't talk as much about the film community because, as you know, it ain't big in the first place.
Not
You left, so the community's now gone.
Yeah, that's funny.
No, there are some people around that do some cinematic work. One of the people that we just gave one of our young entrepreneur awards to from Believe in a Dream is Morgan Gillet. And she's 15 or 16. She works as an actor. She works as a director. She works as a producer. She's got some just this marvelous set of award-winning cinematic work. I can show you a link to her place. Look up MG Entertainment.
MG Entertainment.
Yeah, and so she was doing a lot of this stuff in Houston, and then her family moved here. Until she now works out of here. I mean, like she spent her summer as a high school student producing something like 2 or 3 music videos.
Wow.
Go figure, right?
Yeah.
So it all goes back to what I think I said originally about that community, and that is like there's more there than you think. It's always hidden. They don't always go off and promote themselves. And so I think in the arts community, that's very true. There are people in our arts community that are starting to receive acclaim outside, such as Theo. And then there are other people that do work just as good as Theo that are still hanging out here locally and not getting as much accolades And you have to talk. You should talk to Theo.
Yeah, I
bring that boy on the podcast.
I definitely need to.
How life has changed.
Yeah, the first time I met him was doing a documentary actually, and at the time, I didn't realize just how big his stuff is, and I'm like, oh yeah, this guy is definitely huge. And there's another person named Mark Brast, who I've never met personally, but I know he does a lot of stuff with a lot of artists, like rap artists and stuff.
He's great.
Yeah. Really great guy.
That's what I like about, so I got to know Theo fairly well. I got to know Mark a little, but that's why it's so much fun to be part of a community, because you get to know these guys, and then pretty soon they're going to be big celebrities, and they probably won't be around as much. Mark's latest pop-up was in Atlanta.
Seen that.
It was not in Fort Wayne. And where I remember seeing him was at pop-ups at Wunderkammer and things like that.
Matter of fact, the Wunderkammer.
Dan introduced me to Mark. Dan was like, "You should meet this guy. He's got it going on."
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just really like there's a lot of great talent out there. I just think that I think what the issue is some people they're specifically more in the music scene. I don't know what your opinions are about the music scene. There's definitely there's a really successful music scene if you look outside of maybe like hip hop, I would say, or rock even too. But like, I think that a lot of people, at least just a lot of folks that I have as friends on Facebook who I know from Fort Wayne who are rappers or R&B singers or whatever, I feel like there's not people don't take it as serious. And I feel like people kind of initially come out the gate thinking that they have doubts about themselves. What I had to learn about everything that I've been doing is I had to stop. I mean, there's going to be doubts. It's just a natural human instinct sometimes when you get nervous about certain stuff, or you kind of repetition, you do a lot of repetition and don't really see a different result. You start to doubt certain things that you're doing. But for myself, I kind of just like, that's what this podcast is all about, is speaking about the excellence of stuff. I don't ever like to think or talk about negatively about what it is that I'm doing or things that I've created. I'm going to have my critique, of course, about certain things that I do. I'm going to be the most critical person about myself all the time, but
can't grow otherwise.
Exactly. But I always, look at my stuff with some sort of positivity in mind. Even the projects that I've done way in the past that I hate, I look at it and say, what, I really like this shot. Or I really liked how I did this particular edit. I loved how I lit this scene. I loved how this person acted in this scene. I love my direction here. Like, I try to look at every single bit of my stuff with some sort of positivity and speak about it as well. And I feel like a lot of people that I know creatively back in Fort Wayne don't necessarily do that, or they don't take it seriously. A lot of people, are kind of just, some people just don't look at it as they can be much bigger than what they would, what they are now. That's just a mental thing, of course, that I feel like a lot of people struggle with. But of course, the marketing aspect. And I would just briefly, if you could briefly answer, like, what do you think could help creatives to market themselves a little bit better? Like, what do you think they could do besides, of course, social media, different types of things on social media, but what things do you think that they could do to help them just get a little bit more, a little bit more awareness or a little bit more visibility to people out there in Fort Wayne?
And I wish I had a silver bullet for that.
Yeah.
I literally spent about a year, not totally devoted to, but walking around trying to figure out what I could do to help artists become more successful. And so I talked to all sorts of people about what are the problems, et cetera, et cetera. And I think a lot of it boils down to trying to sell outside this market. I think if you're working only in Fort Wayne and to Fort Wayne audiences, then your product can be fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you know that have played the brass rail that are awesome bands? Oh my God.
A bunch, yeah.
That are that didn't come in from Chicago or Cleveland or wherever, but they're great. There are a lot of people here locally, but as you say, you don't necessarily see them going off and promoting themselves.
Yeah.
And part of promoting yourself is to see yourself appealing to a wider audience.
Right.
And to see yourself as a band that plays throughout the Midwest of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Or see yourself as an artist that sells everywhere.
Right.
Do you know the artist goes by the name Toscago on Instagram?
Toscago that sounds kind of familiar.
Toska go. Toscago.
Yeah, I think I've heard it. I think I actually have seen that.
His name is Martin, and I'll butcher his last name, so I might not even try it. It's like I don't know. He's I won't.
I think I've seen that name before.
But he came to Fort Wayne out of Africa, and is like, oh my God, incredible in terms of his art. He's now studying at an art school out on the East Coast. But look at his Insta, and you'll just be blown away. You'll be blown away. So here's a guy that if he were only trying to sell to a Fort Wayne audience, kind of like Theo, if Theo was only trying to sell to a Fort Wayne audience, you're not going to get that terribly far. But if you envision yourself bigger, as I'm creating some of the work that I want to do in 2022 with young entrepreneurs who believe in a dream, the very first session that we're going to have in the kind of the accelerator part of it is going to be about starting with, let's talk about what your vision is. I want to know what your vision is. I want to be able to influence that if I can, quite frankly, Stefan. I remember one of the people I worked with back in the day who was talking about doing a venture that was basically maybe going to be selling some little things here locally, but I stopped and just said, you do realize, by the way, don't you, that uh, the product that you make, the bigger markets are everywhere else. Fort Wayne isn't your market. Your biggest markets are going to be, it's a huge market, and it's not just Fort Wayne. And she was sort of like,
Yeah.
I kind of thought that, but I didn't really want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, I don't know what that mentality is that keeps people from doing that, but that's why I enjoy being a coach, is that I can kind of jump in there and go, oh, by the way, why do you want to open a store in Fort Wayne?
Mm-hmm.
In her
Yeah.
case, she was selling swimwear. It was like, you need to be in Miami.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need to be on all the warm places and on the coast. So
Yeah.
your job is to go find distribution in boutiques and all the cool resort places.
Yeah, that is
So
true. A lot of people don't research that. A lot of people don't like educate themselves on what is in their area that they're at or where they're trying to put their, business at. That is true.
There's a cultural difference between the conservative Midwest and the entrepreneurial Bay Area. In the Bay Area, you start thinking big. In the Midwest, you have to be taught that you need to go there.
Yeah. Wow.
I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And I feel like that, like I said, that goes back to the whole idea of growing up in a small town compared to growing up in a major city.
Exactly.
That's definitely big. And I think that just affects the attitudes. I think growing up and realizing that you had to be taught to go to these places, it gives you, I think that also there's positives and negatives to that. I think, a lot of the people who I've mentored who wanted to be actors, models, photographers, and stuff like that. They had, and I think it's always looked at in these entertainment industries like, oh, being a actor, you're going to get millions and millions of dollars, or being a rapper, you can get millions and millions, being a filmmaker, whatever. A lot of people look at that and they look at the gold first. and that's what ends up making people like, kind of realize that, oh, maybe this isn't meant for them. Like, and I used to be like that. I used to think about the gold, of course, but at the same time, I've always been like passionate about film, and I really fell in love with it. So where it's like, I make pretty good money now, but at the same time, I'm nowhere where I want to be at in making money. And I feel like I can get there. Absolutely. But I'm not looking at it as that's what I'm trying to chase. I'm more trying to chase the just having films out there that can impact people, and that can, put people in position or change people's perspectives. I think that's what it is. I feel like you just have to people have to really dive into that selfish mindset a little bit about how much money they could possibly make of this. And, I've had a lot of conversations, even conversations. I'm gonna shout out my guy, Dylan Belcher, who's eventually going to be on the podcast. We had a conversation about that same thing too, just about, kind of realizing like, hey, you got to get your mind away from this, I just want to make all the money and just that's it type of deal, to where you don't really care about the people you're working with or the people that you're creating for, or the market that you're in, so it's important for people to kind of, how I say it is you have to really go through a mental journey consistently throughout the lifetime, but specifically before you decide to say, I want to do this and do that in the creative or entrepreneurial space, because
think about some of the conversation we had earlier. If all you're concerned about is hawking money, then are you creating the culture for your customers or your employees that enables you to stay around? Or are you going to be one of those companies that's like, why the hell are people not coming to work for me? Why the hell are people not buying my product?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
you got to be doing it. This is going to sound way corny, but I'm just going to say it anyway. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you also better view it as an art form.
Yeah,
you ought to be able to be creating something because you love it, and you love the art and the feel that it makes.
Absolutely. I put it in the same category. Yeah, absolutely. 1000%. And people need to look at it like that too. There's an art to entrepreneurship. Like it's not easy, definitely. I can imagine companies like, like a lot of the different companies back in Fort Wayne. And I think to myself, like, can I imagine doing what they're doing? No, because that is it sounds so difficult. It sounds so intricate. Like those people have really like formulated an art to their business and their process. And that's what makes it so special.
Metal spinning, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Metal spinning and all that, just all the different companies. It's huge. One of my last few questions here for you. Do you feel obligated to help out the city? Do you feel like that you kind of have a responsibility set to help people out and give back?
Oh man, I could make it sound real pompous and shit and say, yes, of course, I feel a responsibility. But I'm going to answer it honestly and say, Stefan, this is fun.
Yeah.
I do what I do because it's fun and fulfilling. And I think it's important to have a mission, to enabling the next generation to build a better tomorrow. That's a vision that I think is totally important. So I think there's a level of importance to it. But do I feel like a pull from responsibility? I think I find a pull from the fact that I kind of think it's important, but it's also a hell of a lot of fun for me to go do this.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times people say I would do this for free. Well, I think I have in a lot of cases, at least for cheap. I'm not a rich guy. I could have been working on things that have made me a lot more money than I have. But so I'm highly motivated by what I do. And I'm highly motivated by making a difference in the world. And this is how I want to make a difference in the world. I'm not motivated by, buying rings or gold chains or shit like that, right? You're not going to see me doing that.
We're not going to see Steve Franks in a G-Wagon Mercedes-Benz anytime soon.
No, you're not. maybe if somebody's giving me a ride. But responsibility, feeling a sense of responsibility to it isn't why I do it. It's because I'm motivated by it. And it may sound like the same thing, but I think there's a subtle difference in the fact that it energizes me. I'm motivated by it. I want to see my community. If you want to view my community as Northeast Indiana, I want to see it grow, and I want to see it grow from the bottom up. And it's crazy. Sorry, I'm gonna show you a book. This guy named Eric Gleacher. I went to grad school at the University of Chicago. In the building that I went to school in, it's called the Gleacher Center, because that yo-ho over there gave him $15 million to create a building. It's like, holy crap. So he's this big time rich guy. And he talked, I just listened to him talk. And he talked about the three words that are on the front of this: risk, reward, and repeat. And when you think about that, it's like, how did you succeed? It's like, I took a risk, and then you think, oh, okay, and he got a reward for it. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. It was like, I took a risk, and then I rewarded all the people who helped me make it happen through the risk. And you think about repeat, it was like, oh, then you did it again, right? And it's like, no, all of those people, they're going to repeat it, and they're going to go off and do it. And it made so much sense to me. It's like, holy crap. So I in hindsight now, I can look at all these people that I've worked with, and they're out there trying to make their lives better, and they're out there trying to repeat it. And some are doing it almost exactly the way I did. Aaron Robles is doing, youth and other entrepreneurial coaching. And we look a lot alike in that respect. So I think it's important to say that and to have a sense of mission and have a sense of vision and see something that you want to do. But I don't feel a sense of responsibility to it.
That's great. What is the most important advice that you have been given in your lifetime? What is the most important advice that has stuck with you for 70 years?
Holy crap. That's a really good question. I wish you would have given me a few days to think about that. uh, I look at uh, I look at it in terms of mindset.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to sound not corny, but it's going to sound contrived for me to say that I didn't learn a bunch of lessons like when I was 20.
Yeah.
I was too engaged in like being a stoner when I was 20. And I didn't do it when I was like 30 or 40 necessarily. And I didn't necessarily learn a bunch of lessons in business school. What I've basically learned is that as I just learned a little bit here and a little bit there, the best advice that I've kind of been given is to just go off and be an independent thinker. And that I cannot count and should not count necessarily on being just a little rote follower or another little army ant.
Yeah.
And if you ask me who said that, where did I learn that, I don't know that I could ascribe it to anybody or anything in particular.
Yeah.
But throughout everything I've done, I've kind of come to the conclusion that you have to think for yourself, you have to act for yourself. Ain't nobody gonna do it for you. Ain't nobody gonna just hand it to you.
Yeah.
You get to do it. You get to do it yourself, and it's fun to do it that way.
Absolutely, that's great.
I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could sit and go, well, one day I sat on my father's knee and he told me. I don't have that answer. I
think that answer is great. It is very great. I think that's important because people are going to hear that, and people who really look up to you and admire all the stuff that you have done for the community and for them individually, they're going to look at that and be like, wow, so this is what has helped him get to a certain spot. Maybe this is what can help me, so I think that answer is very good. Okay. My last thing to ask here.
Good.
The last thing to ask here, it's kind of two questions in one, but what would be your message to leave for the entrepreneurs who are young and old, who are trying to create stuff? Because, it always is interesting to me, and also very admiring as well when I see people who are already maybe like in their 30s or 40s or 50s and starting businesses at that time too. And I like seeing that because I think that gives a lot of hope to people who are of that age, who don't think that they could do something. Like my brother, for instance, my brother is doing great stuff. He's taking care of himself, whatever. But I know he wants to kind of break off and to do some like creative type stuff or maybe some entrepreneurial stuff. And he's almost 40. So I'm like, hoping that, me, myself, outside of all the stuff I do, that, he could see somebody and maybe look at that and be like, wow, okay, this person did it. So what would be your message to the young and old people who are creating these new businesses, these startups? What is your, I guess, advice to give them, if they're creating right now?
This will be a longer answer than you probably bargained for. Sorry.
It's all good.
There is no wrong way to do it. Everything runs around the fact that there is no wrong way to do it. And it's not wrong to start when you're young. It's not wrong to start when you're older. The statistics actually will show you that everybody thinks it's a younger generation that's more entrepreneurial. And then the statistics will show you and I don't have all the numbers right in front of me, but according to what I've read recently, it's like, no, man, it's like people's in the 30s and 40s. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
really?
Honestly.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. That are doing the most things. So there's no wrong way to do it. Being independent and starting to do something that you own and that you create the value for and that you retain and keep the return for can happen at any time. And it can be a side gig. It can be a small local business. It can be a nonprofit. It can be a huge scalable venture. There are stereotypes in our industry and in entrepreneurship. When you say the word entrepreneurship, it conjures up all these thoughts, and that people will think about, oh crap, that means that I need to go do something like Mark Zuckerberg did. No, it doesn't. It means that you want to. You could start like Bo Gonzalez and have a little truck selling hot dogs, for God's sake, little cart selling hot dogs, and then parlay that into a food truck, and then parlay that into a physical location. So there's no wrong way to do it. The only wrong way to do it is to not do it.
Very, very good. Yeah.
And so for those of us who would be like, oh, man, that's too risky. I can't do that. Startups in particular, or new businesses, are not about taking huge risks and going off and putting out, a lot of money on something that, it's just a roll of the dice. It's about continually reducing the risk by getting to understand your customers better, beginning to test whether or not they want what you're selling, beginning to line up what their needs are with what you're selling, and do it in a more scientific way of starting to test it from time to time and find out what works. And you can do all that part-time.
Yeah.
And you can start small. So there's no wrong way to do it. The only wrong way to do it is to not. Did I say that before? Yeah, I know. I'm repeating it on purpose. I remember talking to high school students when I ran the student venture lab at the Innovation Center and did the student meetup at the Innovation Center. And there one or two things typically would happen. They would either be afraid to do anything because they thought, I'm too young, blah, blah, blah. Or they would start to map out something that was totally not doable. It was like, I'm going to build a 747. Well, no, you're not. You're in high school, for God's sake. So you could, let's think about starting with an aviation blog, okay?
Right. Yeah.
And then building up your clientele. When you think way too big, you're going to probably crash and burn and end up not doing it. And if you don't even start, you're going to not do it. So could I already say that the only thing to, no, never mind. You know the answer.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Even if you're going to practice owning something while you're doing your 9-to-5 job, now you've got the practice. If your employer comes to you and maybe you've got another revenue stream at the same time. Maybe when your employer comes to you and goes, well, Steve, sorry, man, but we just can't keep you on any longer. When your employer comes and tells you that, now you're ready. You've either already got another revenue stream or you've tried it out and you know how to do it. So just try it.
Absolutely. There you go. I love that. That's perfect. That is the perfect advice, the perfect answer. I already know that a lot of people are going to appreciate that, because there's a lot of people that pop up in my mind as you say that, where I'm like, yes, this is how you need to approach these things. There's no wrong way to do it, unless you don't do it. That is perfect. Very last question, final question.
That's what you say.
What does what does the +1 mean? What does +1 mean to you?
Oh man, for all these years, you didn't know what I meant by that. Is that what you're saying? So,
well, no, I knew.
Okay, so plus, so it was kind of curious. The other day, somebody said something about, I thought that +1 had something to do with like Google Plus. It was like, and Google Plus is like, never made it out of the gate, man.
Yeah.
And it's like no, a +1 is an upvote. A +1 comes from like an upvote out of Reddit and things like that. So it's like, I'm gonna give you an upvote. I think that whatever you did is worthy of an upvote. It's my way of giving respect. It's like, hey man, instead of writing out respect, +1. And so you'll see me use that throughout social media. And I get weird questions from time to time. People think it's like +1. Or you mean like a +1 for like a date or an event or something like that? No, that was an upvote. I don't want to go to your party with you.
Right. That's awesome. That's great. Well, Steve,
you just consider that a +1.
Yeah.
First of all, let me give a big +1 to you right now.
Appreciate
consider
it.
that means major respect.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve, for just being such an awesome person, an awesome motivating force for so many people out here in Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana and beyond. I appreciate it for just of you, of course, supporting the stuff that I've done with SW Films and now the podcast. Just to have you on here is a great opportunity and just an amazing thing. Because like I said, there's so many different people I've wanted to speak to, and you have definitely been on that list as far as just talking about, your history, your background, and just the things that you have opinions on in terms of the city and, the moves being made right now is incredible to hear everything. And I just want to thank you again for being on the podcast. It was a great one. I appreciate it.
Man, I really appreciate it myself. In case you can't tell, I like talking.
Yeah.
And I do have an opinion here or there. So I wish you much success with the podcast. And frankly, what I'm really looking forward to are the films that you're going to produce.
Yeah.
I don't care as much about the videos that you do for people. I want to see some more of those feature films come out.
Absolutely.
Shorts or feature films, either one, that are all you. Do it, man.
I appreciate it. We got a lot of great stuff coming. A lot of good things are planned the way.
I'll save a few +1s just for you.
There you go. I know you got them stored up somewhere, so I can't wait to receive a few. So thank you to everybody listening and watching the podcast. You guys know to go subscribe to the Excellent Podcast and go subscribe to SW Films. And once again, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. And for all the people listening and watching, I will see you again on the next one.